So for this tutorial, we're going to be using a normal eraser, a pencil, some paper, and fine liners. So this is the little guy that we're going to be painting, well, drawing. As you can see, he has a very nice range of grays and lights and shadows. So it's going to be really fun to draw him with our fine liners. So the final result of what we're going to be doing today, it's gonna look something like this. And if you're feeling intimidated, don't. It's actually more about patience and time than anything else. So we're going to begin by drawing a bean shaped like tardigrade. You see he has like this elongated shape. So instead of beginning with a very detailed drawing like his little face or one of his legs, start by the general idea, the general picture, the size of the tardigrade, where his face or his legs or like these little buttons that he has are placed. That will give you a very proportionate drawing. Because if you begin by drawing just a detail, like you start by the face, a very detailed face, you're probably going to get a drawing that's out of proportion, that you're going to see at the end, and like maybe the face is too big, too small, the legs are in the wrong position. So just do the general bean, then make some ovals for the legs, and make some kind of marking for the little buttons thingies that he has on his back. And after those things are in place, start putting the folds, those wrinkles that he has all through his body. There are some main wrinkles, that the most dark ones, the darkest ones. So place those two in a very soft, light line. And after you're confident that you already placed those in the right spot, then you can start putting in some detail. Depending on how you feel about how confident you are with your skills, maybe you want to put in more detail to guide yourself when we're using the fine liners, or you'll add less detail because you're pretty sure you're going to nail it. After we're done with our drawing, this is optional. I prefer to do it in order to end with a softer graphite line. You can use a kneaded eraser in order to take out the excess. I tend to have a heavy hand, so that's why this is an important step for me, but maybe your lines are super soft. In that case, you do not need to do this. So we're going to begin with our fine liners. I'm going to be using just 3. The 0.8 millimeters, 0.1 and 0.2. If you don't have fine liners, maybe you can use some other pens that you have around in your house. The point of using the fine liners is that they're going to give you since the tips are so different, the size of the tip, you're going to be able to get more fine details when you're working with the number 1 or the number 2 versus the number 8. So we're going to begin from left to right, and I'm going to start using mostly the 0.1 and 0.2 For the super light areas, I like to begin just putting dots. I'm just putting dots. This is not like a line thing, or I am not making some kind of mesh. I'm just putting on dots. So where the shadow is a little bit darker, it's going to be denser. And in order to help myself, like at some point I want to make this shadow areas more dark, I'm going to be using the number 2. It's the gray one that you see on the video. And when it's lighter, as you can see, his head is actually pretty light, I will use mostly the number 1, and I will, in the denser areas, it's going to be denser and like more packed, and in the other areas they're going to be like more dispersed, so that you can have this sense, this gradient. As I said at the beginning, this is mostly about patience, putting in the time. So you're going to be having patience, a lot of time, and putting in a lot of dots. If you want to create more detail, then it's just a matter of putting in the hours, sitting down, and drawing those dots. For the more defined shadows, the part that are not so much a gradient but like a defined patch, I will take the number 1 and kind of make the border of this little patch very softly, so that if, I don't want it to end up like a patch, a rough patch. There are a few places where there are actually like harsh lines, harsh borders, but if you go to the reference image, it's pretty soft. So I will just make a very soft kind of line, dot line, and when I have like a better idea, then I will start putting in more dots, and depending on how, going back to the reference image, how this part is, I will make a very harsh line, or I will just keep it very light and soft and create this gradient. First I will go just with the number 1 and create like the rough shape or the rough area where things are packed or more light, and then I will create more emphasis with the number 2. For the bottom thingies, the things like it's, yeah, like he seems like a cushion with a bottom stuck in it, I will actually make lines because it's so harsh. Like you can see, it's not very soft. It's more hard defined. I will make lines, soft lines with the number 1, and when I'm satisfied with the shape and position, then I will soften it with more points around it. But yeah, don't like, it's easier to correct if you have a soft dotted thingy part than if you go in with the number 2 or the number 8 and you make a harsh line. As you can see, I haven't used actually the number 8 at all until now. I'm just going to use it to make some emphasis on the part of the fold where it's darker. I have already made like the major areas using the point 1 and the point 2, but now I want to make some emphasis on the folds in the dark parts, in the darker areas. So that's where we're going to use very lightly and sparingly still the number 8, the point 8. So remember, if you're having a hard time going between your drawing and the reference image, like the original one, remember to use the one provided, the end result of this tutorial, so that you can have an easier and better idea or of where to place the darker areas, how to kind of place the dots around. Yeah, like don't make it even harder for yourself if you're like struggling a little bit. Just use the final result in order to get an idea. Okay, this is how it's supposed to look like, or yeah, maybe this is the right direction for me to go, so that you can have a better result at the end. So now I'm gonna go in with the point 8, and I'm going to make some emphasis on the darker areas. I'm going to take the number 2 again and do the same thing. The parts that I feel are still too light, like maybe I need some more density or I need to make more emphasis in some areas, I will do so, because at the end, like, you got a better idea of how your tardigrade has turned out. Like, you can tell better where you need to maybe put in some more dots and more work. And afterwards, we're just going to begin doing the contour. I'm just using the number 2, not the number 8, because this guy, he's very soft, so it's better to use the number 2 for the general contour. And as you can see, I am not making lines in most of the folds. I'm just leaving that up to the gradient that we already created. We already have a pretty good shape of how he looks, of how the folds are looking. And in the really dark areas, I will just make a darker line, a more thick line. And if need be, I will use the number 8 for parts of his belly where the folds are a little bit darker. And this is the final result. I hope you're very happy with your own tardigrade and that you enjoyed this tutorial.